Welcome to another edition of In the Box. I'm Coach Q. That's Apostle Evangelist Reverend Paul Bell. So we thank you all for joining us once again. So Paul, we want to wrap up Romans, or we've been Romans chapter 1. And you want to go ahead and what you was just saying before we just came on?
Well, as Paul was writing the church of Rome, that there are some standards that we ought to be um, governed by, and those standards as a church is that church be spotless and blameless when the return of Jesus Christ comes. Right. So, in these last days, we are looking at so many things that can lead us to compromise our stance and faith with God. Interest rates, all these material things. But what's our true stance? And as I look at Second Timothy chapter 3 and verses 2 through 5, it says, but understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty. For people will be lovers of the self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unpleasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. Avoid such people. From among them are those who creep into households and capture weak women burdened with sins and led astray by various passions. Wow. So, and if you sum that up and we go to Romans, if you can pick some of that stuff in there, that what he said, we have traded in, we have suppressed the truth about God, right? So this word has been written way before you and I had an idea what it was going to be like. So, but if we can look at this and we look at the time frame of what's to come, should we be wary, or should we, as disciples of Christ, should we be discipling other people to come from out of that dark stage or where they are? What I've been meditating on last week was, our job is not to judge, but is to help reach people so they don't get the judgment due to them, that wrath of God. And so that means we have to be intentional, as a Paul would be, even in our hardest state of being, still love one another and show other people that Christ that's in us. And I like to think, man, I was just thinking, like when we take communion, man, and it says, do this in remembrance of me. It's this part. I think about those stripes he took. I think about all the pressure he had. I think about all the things that he did that we don't deserve what he did. You know what I'm saying? We don't deserve that peace. We don't deserve that joy off of him. So I'm thinking that we have to be intentional about being selfless. You know what I'm saying? When he said he took the bread with the disciples there, he was showing a piece of him. We ought to share a piece of ourselves with others, that they can see this genuine of Christ that lives in it. Greater is he that is in me. So if he is in me, each time I take that communion, I should be strengthened. My mind should be modeled after Christ. Not that I'm going to be perfect, but we have a serious issue, an epidemic of loss going on right now. That's all I got.
That's all you
I
got.
ain't run out of time, did I? No.
Well, you almost did. No, no. No, so you brought up First Timothy. That's also similar to the list that he has in Romans 1.
Mm-hmm.
To the end of Romans 1, let's go to chapter 8. It says, furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They became
Mm-hmm.
filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteousness decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. And he goes on into chapter 2 and 1 says, you therefore have no excuse who pass judgment on someone else. For whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same things. So that's kind of hard for some of us to take on, is that we have been participating or currently are participating in some of like some of these things or some of these items that Paul has called out in here, as well as in, like you said, in Timothy. Um, and it's important for us to hold people accountable. And to you, I pose this question: how do we hold people accountable without judging, or is that even possible?
Well, the Bible gives us it gives us ways. I don't know right now for the sake of time, but I think he tells us that if we see a brother sinning, approach them in a meek way, a gentle way, right? Uh, and just say, "Hey, brother, if I see Quill as a pastor of church, hey man, let's talk about what's going on." Out of love. Remember, love covers the multitude of sin. So if I'm coming to you in love, and unless you're combative, then I have to take it to the church. But it's best I come to you and say, hey, man, is that godly? Is that glorifying God? In the same way, it's not I'm going to kick you out the church or we're going to get you out of there. It's best that we try to figure it out and pray about it. And so, and that's one of the questions I was asking like you was talking. Is like, what shall we do with what we learned? And what shall we do with this Christ that we say we serve?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a real issue right now because as I've been going throughout the week, even being sick, I just hear a lot of things in passing, like where is this God? Why are these things happening? Why is this going on? Why is that going on? And these are supposed to be Christians. Again, I'm not judging. I'm just hearing, And then for the sake of me, I read, and I'm not at all about what's going on. It's what is coming, And so now at this point, I think you talked about it. Now I just look for that glorious day of Jesus Christ to return. I'm just waiting on that day to return, and then I do the best practice I can to help plant seeds. You know, uh, so something must die to gain to live, and so I must die in my flesh so that the spirit will live. And the only way that I can get a mentee or disciple someone is it has to be not about me, but it's about the glory of God. If that answered your question.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, yeah, it does because you brought into the fact that the mindset of one another.
Yeah.
I'm just paraphrasing it. The mindset of one
Yeah.
another on how to carry oneself. But I think there are certain things that you can do to hold your brother or your sister accountable. We got to remember when Paul was writing these things, he's writing to the church. He wasn't writing to the world. He's
Right.
writing to
Exactly.
people that were saying that they're part of the church. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's hard for us to understand sometimes because we're so quick to go out into the world and be like, oh yeah, you heathens, you blah blah blah. But like I think we need to look in the church and say, listen, if people in my own congregation, people in my own that I call brother and sister, people I call reverend, elder, sister, doctor, whatever it may be, if they're doing the same things or they're doing these things that Paul is calling out, how are we to even accept uh, the gospel? How are we to even preach the gospel? That's one thing that comes to mind. But like you said, it's a matter of how we convey it in love, and there are ways that things that we can do to control ourselves in a manner that's appropriate to God, because He says that it shows yourself approved unto God, right?
Mhm.
Uh, study it, study the word. What does study look like? Does not mean just reading it. No, it means getting into it, finding out the nitty gritty, and like you say, a lot is be that crime scene investigator. Okay, many of us just pick up the word we take what granddad and grandma said and
Mhm.
use that to stand on that, and that does not produce a solid foundation. We're like that word that's spread on the rock. It grows for a little while, but when it comes time for it to be weathered, it blows away. Um, but I personally think that there are things, or we are to call each other out on what each one is doing.
Mhm.
And by doing so, like you said, this is the book of James. The book of James talks about how you uh, bring a brother or sister up if that's doing wrong. First of all, you approach them. If they don't listen, you take somebody else with you. If they don't listen to that, then you bring them in front of a committee. If they don't do that, then you bring them up in front of the church. I mean, so there's progression of things that we can do to hold each other accountable. The question is, are we bold enough to do it?
Well, I'm reading in Romans
Accept that
14.
feedback. Go ahead.
Romans 14, do not pass judgment on one another. He ain't talking about the world and us. He talking about us in church. And so, for the sake of time, again, I just encourage us to read that because it's real long, because it goes over all the way to 15, So, but again, it is a way you approach folk, and it has to be in a meek way. Again, that mindset. If you already stuck in your sin, it ain't no changing you. I can't let you, like we talked about before. I can't let you continue to contaminate the church with your thoughts. I think we had an issue with someone like that before, and we got to address it. Or the church will be contaminated with their belief if they talk long enough. If you allow somebody to talk to you in your ear long enough, they will convince you in some form or fashion. I believe that. you know,
if you're not strong enough to understand, right?
if you're not strong enough to understand, if you have not studied, show yourself rightly approved. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. And so we just have to be mindful of what Paul is saying in these times that I call them love letters that he wrote. You know, he loved us so much, just like Jesus did. This dude was locked up and still writing to me, writing to the church,
Mhm.
and then even transferring over to us that come into church. Hey, let my eyes be open. You got we got to stop reading the surface and deep dive into what the Holy Spirit is saying. Because if you have not truly repented and seek the Lord, you will not hear the Lord. That's just my thinking.
Yeah.
Because you are covered with the things of the world. You have these doubts. You're seeking God in a way that I want what I want. God, what can you give me? So I'm doing this work for you. What can you give me?
Yeah.
Well, He's already given me everything I needed, right? And so then, as I continue to seek the Lord, I seek Him in a way that says, "Okay, I want to do more." And and so as I was reading John 6, that hunger that we had when we eat on this morsel of the book, the bread of life. What I'm saying, I'm full, and then when I drink of His communion, I'm not thirsty anymore. You know, this right here, after I drink this, I'm gonna be thirsty some more. But no, but we just got a serious epidemic going on right now, and some would say, "Where is God?" And you got the enemy seeming like. I watched this movie last night, and so it was these
You and your
priests.
movies, man.
Yeah, I know, right? So it was called it was called something. So this these priests were trying to get this possessed person, and so they were praying, but the devil was laughing at them because he knew that they didn't believe. So they just kept laughing at him. And I tend to often think sometimes, do is our faith like that when we see the things happening now, and because the pressure seems so heavy, do is our faith watered down that we give up when it seemed like God didn't move right there? But He's already moved. He says He's already working it out for our good,
Yeah.
right? For those who love Him. Just because we don't see it right now, He says He's working it out. He's behind the scenes already doing it. He just wants us to give Him the desires of His heart. Trust Him while we're walking through it and commit to Him while we're going through it.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I believe that the enemy has no hold. He's already took the sting of death, so he can't do much to us. And if he strip us, he says, my loss is my gain. So
Yeah.
now I see God moving. Take that. God will provide. That's nothing to me. So say that that's all you needed. Go ahead, I'll give it to you. It said if somebody was home, so say you hungry, here you go. Take my food. Take whatever you need. Have a Job relationship, right? But the seriousness of it is, do we truly depend on the wonder working power of God? At this point, do we trust Him? Do we believe? I like to believe that if you don't have a gut of belief that this word is real and that we have to be on God's time and not on ours, you'll keep on having these doubts and these worries. And He says a double-minded man is going to be
Well,
tossed to and
boy.
fro.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unstable. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And he's tossed to and back and forth.
Yeah.
So we just have to be mindful, man, as we continue to do in the box this platform here that is the God's word, and then as we plant seeds to help in bringing people from the darkness into the light, is God's glory, not ours.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not for us.
And like you said, these last days, a lot of people just don't even trust Him and want to adhere to any type of biblical standard. They're trusting themselves more so, as we read in Romans and as we read in Timothy. It's just up to those of us who are filled with God's Spirit to continue to encourage the other believers that, hey, these are the days that were spoken of. Okay. Um, Stay strong and just continue to carry yourself in a manner so that when Jesus comes or your time comes, whichever comes first, you're ready to go.
Now, when you say that, are you talking to the church or are you talking to the people outside of the
The
church? When you
church.
say,
I'm
okay,
talking, we're just talking strictly about the church right now.
okay,
I
okay,
ain't
okay.
even outside yet. Because
So they should pretty much already know what you're
well,
telling me, but
do you honestly think that a lot of people know
I can only account for me.
But no, but we're speaking, right? We're speaking
Yeah.
to people. We're talking. We can talk to.
So
So
people in the
the
church, if
audience.
they're going and getting led and the word is in them, they should know.
Okay, so you put a qualifier on it, being led and the word is in them. How many people are just following, okay, that don't have the word or following
Mm,
blindly, right?
well,
We hear and
to a
see it a
certain,
lot. We hear like, oh my gosh, you really believe that? Or where does it say that? Or I can't believe that's true, or they've been saying that for years.
so that's why we got a lot of compromise going on. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So I know you're not feeling too well, but I thank you for being on. And uh folks, if you're watching, keep Paul Bell in prayer. He was under the weather today. He stepped on, he trooped it out today.
The
So
whole week. The whole week.
all right. So that's this edition of In the Box. If you want to hit subscribe so you get notifications of when the next episode comes up, feel free to do so. Or feel free to write us at inthebox317. Again, that's inthebox317 at gmail.com. I'm Coach Q. That's Paul Bell. Until next time, folks, be blessed.